Okay, so good evening, everyone. Again, thank you for joining our CMA Bootcamp. Allow me to introduce my colleagues on this webinar. We have my colleague Charles. Charles is the commercial manager of Morgan International for selective territories. And we have our colleague and instructor and alumni, Mr. Daniel Jarjoura, who will be taking you through the importance of passing the exam, not only the how, but also the why and the where and the when. Again, thank you so much for joining this webinar. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Please, can you confirm that you can see the presentation? Okay, perfect. Okay, so stay connected, invest in your knowledge and your skills. How do you become a CMA and why do you become a CMA in the first place? Morgan International is an IMA Platinum CMA course provider and the Becker Professional Education Partner. What is the important thing about our webinar today? We're not only going to tell you that Morgan has 30 years of experience, we're not only going to tell you that Morgan is an IMA Platinum CMA course provider, which means that the curriculum, the updates that are being happening on the CMA exam are well established and knowledge, and we know how to do them, and our instructors are well versed to deliver them. We're not only going to tell you we have partnered with the most amazing material provider, which is Becker, because they have the actual curriculum of the exam, they know how to replicate the exam, and they have high passing rates. No, we're also topping all of those information with one very important information, which is personal tips and tricks. Having Mr. Daniel on this presentation or on this call allows you guys to get the secret behind passing the CMA exam. It's a package at the end of the day. So it's the material provider, it's the course provider, it's your own personal commitment, and it's the tips and tricks here and there which will be shared by Mr. Daniel following through in those slides. So why the CMA? It's the global benchmark for management accountants. Mastery of 12 core practice areas. It enables you to grasp practical applications in finance and it assures employers of the on-job competency to improve organizational performance. What are the steps to become a CMA? I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have already maybe undergone the application process or are actually on the way, but I'm just gonna explain them to you in general. So the step number one is to apply to take the CMA exam by submitting your application for the IMA membership. And then you have to study, of course, for the exam. You have to schedule the exam and aim to succeed. This is the most important part while you are sitting for the CMA exam. When it comes to eligibility for the education and the experience, it's very important to know that there are no eligibility requirements to sit for the CMA exam. Again, to sit for the CMA exam. Why is that? It's because you can actually submit for the part 1 or the part 2, sit for your exam, pass both your parts of the exam, and you have 7 years to submit the experience and the education bachelor's degree that you need. Meaning, if you currently do not hold a bachelor's degree, but you're on the way, maybe if you're a second year student, a third year student, you can still study for the CMA exam, prepare for it, sit for it, pass both parts of the exam, and then you have 7 years to be able to send your documents to the IMA. What do they require? They require your bachelor's degree. They require 2 years of experience, and then, of course, you have to pass the 2 parts of the exam, which is when you will be announced as an actual certified management accountant. You passed your CMA exam, you are eligible for the CMA. Now, what do you need to do to maintain your accreditation? You will need to have 30 hours of CPE credits and an annual IMA membership. Digging into the details of the CMA exam, let's talk about the part 1. So we have external financial reporting and decisions, planning, budgeting, and forecasting, performance management, cost management, internal controls, and technology and analytics. These are the very important topics of the CMA, and this is what the actual exam is about. So the difference is in the percentage. You have 15%, 20%, 20% for performance management, and 15 for cost management, internal control, and technology and analytics. Now, you're going to tell me, I see some planning, budgeting, accounting, forecasting. I'm going to tell you, yes, this is true. This is correct. However, I'm going to give you a personal tip or a personal trick on that. Whenever you say a CMA, Certified Management Accountant, everyone thinks A is for accountant, then this is an accounting certification. No, it's not. Do not worry. This is not a CPA. This is not an external accounting. It does involve accounting, of course, but that's not the point of the CMA, which will be reflected in part 2. If you notice, part 2 focuses more on the financial statement analysis, focuses on corporate finance, business decision analysis, enterprise risk management, capital investment decisions, all the way to professional ethics. So this is the core of the CMA. It's an accounting and finance certification, which means that it will teach you how to read the numbers, it will teach you how to analyze the numbers and take decisions based on that, and it best suits people who are aspiring to be in the management decisions, not those who are aspiring to be accountants. What are the CMA exam and registration fees? So you have to apply for the exam, which means there is an entrance fee of $300 valid for 3 years, which means that you have to pass both parts of the CMA exam within those 3 years. The IMA membership fee is also mandatory for $295 to be renewed annually, and the exam per part is $595. You can sit for the exam sequence in either sequence for the exams in either sequence that you wish for, part 1, part 2, or the opposite. It doesn't really matter. The CMA exam is administered by Prometric on-site exam, and the official exam results are announced by the IMA within 4 to 6 weeks. And being a Morgan student, and since Morgan is a platinum IMA provider, all of the students who are scheduled with Morgan are subject to the bundled discount, which is provided by Morgan and provided by the IMA for the platinum providers only. So reach out for your local city whenever you want to sit for the exam so that we can guide you and you will benefit from the Morgan bundle discount, which is up to 35% discount on the bundle purchase of the exams. Now, when can you take the exams? There are 3 exam windows for the CMA. We have January, February, May, June, and September, October of every year. The good thing is that you can book all the way up to the 15th of January. You can still book for the same exam window, which is January, February. Same thing goes for May, June, and for September and October. Heads up, the seats in Prometric are not really controlled by neither Morgan nor IMA, so please make sure you book your seats ahead of time. A quick overview of the exam. So the exam is of 4 hours. It's 100 multiple choice questions and 2 30-minute essays. Whenever you start with the multiple choice questions, note that you will need to answer 50% of those multiple choice questions correctly. If you don't answer them, you will not be able to proceed for the 30-minute essays. And if you do, the system will automatically allow you to give it your try. Now, let's talk a little bit about the scoring. So each part of the CMA exam is graded on a scale of 0 to 500, and the score is 360 and above to be considered as passing. The multiple choice question represents 70% of your overall score. Essay questions account for the remaining 25%. The essay questions for each part are hand graded, which actually gives you more credibility when it comes to how to answer the exam or the essay. And the exam scores are released approximately 6 weeks after the end of the month in which the exam was taken. So, let's create a solid study plan together. What do you need to think of? So first of all, decide which part you're taking first. Again, the methodology and the order of 1 and 2 does not work here because the society has decided that you can actually sit for either part of the exam in the order that you wish for. There's a personal preference, of course, but at the end of the day, this is possible and feasible. You can take parts 1 and 2 of the CMA exam in any order, watch the Becker CMA course video, which part first, and select your first exam as a starting guide. Your choice should depend on which part you feel the most prepared for. If you know most content in part 1, you may want to consider taking that part first, as it will require the least amount of study time. This is definitely related to your personal experience, and most importantly, the current work that you're doing reflects a lot on the chosen part. You can also review the IMA's content specification outline for the CMA exam to determine which key topics you're most familiar with and which part you're ready to prepare for first. Then, you have to build a realistic study plan. So, building a realistic study plan that is based on your work and personal schedule will ensure that you're setting aside dedicated study time. Set realistic study goals each week to stay on track and organize when you'll cover each of the CMA exam key topic. The IMA provides a learning outcome document that details exactly what you need to know for each section of the CMA exam. And as a guideline, we recommend allocating 120 study hours for part 1 and almost 100 study hours for part 2. Now, personally speaking, I can let you know of something. You have your instructor, you have your material provider, you have your documents, you have your data, you have your online lectures, you have everything that you need. Do not panic, that's correct. It needs commitment, that's definitely and 100% correct. You will need to set your priorities straight, also 100% correct. However, if you set a clear study plan and clear commitment to yourself, you will earn and you will see those later. That's the most important part. So, we talked about the curriculum a little bit about the exam and moving forward into the material provider. Honestly speaking, we skipped a lot of slides that discussed about the Becker. We're gonna showcase a quick review about the Becker study material, but the most important part that I wanted to focus on here is the new AI-powered academic support. It's very important to note that while everyone else is seeking the AI by eliminating the role of the professors or the role of the instructors or the role of actual customer service assisting the candidate, Becker is not doing this. Becker has already included the AI several years back into their system where they actually are telling you you have your own personal tutor right in your pocket. So you can do it from your mobile application, you can do it from your home. You always have someone who is tracking you. And the more you give the Becker system information, the more it gives you back because it analyzes your weakness, your strength. It will tell you when you try to generate a new practice exam, it will tell you, it will be generated based on the weakness of your previous exam. So it's your own personal tutor. The new edition of the Becker platform is the Newt. What is the Newt? It's an AI-powered and academic support. However, this is not an AI collecting data from the cyberspace or collecting data from any information that is available online. No. The Newt AI is actually collecting data from the actual CMA exam, which is from the IMA. So technically speaking, unlike generic AI tools, Newt is powered by Becker's trusted course material, ensuring reliable, accurate, and exam-focused guidance. If you go to an AI, and I think everyone is currently using any AI platform or source. Let's take, for example, ChatGPT. Let's take, for example, Mammoth. If you go and try to place your questions there, you will actually find different answers here than the other platform. So this is why this cannot be actually trusted. That's when you go to Google and you ask him several questions and Wikipedia pops up and starts giving you information. This is not a trusted resource. However, the Newt AI that was actually created by Becker was included in your accesses as candidates and students, and it's picking up the actual information from the actual curriculum. So, if you have a question while you're studying and you're trying to seek for academic support, you can rest assured that the academic support provided is actually accurate and based on the material provider that is available. The Newt also provides immediate answers, delivers real-time AI-powered responses so students don't lose momentum when they're stuck or need quick clarification. It also engages in conversational engagement so students can ask follow-up questions and explore topics in a natural dialogue, making studying feel more interactive and personalized. And it's free and consistent accessibility. Accessible anytime for all CMA students, no matter their plan. Newt is built right into the platform, so there is no need to switch tabs or even wait for help. So I'm just gonna quickly stop sharing my screen. I want to reshare the Becker platform. A quick brief through your access, your Becker CMA access. This is what you see, okay? I'm a little behind because, it told me we're super excited that you've aced your exam. Congratulations, your hard work paid off. Personally speaking, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is not me, but this is an access that's provided for Morgan International, and it actually set the fact that they passed the exam because as a candidate, gave the system this information. If you go through the study journey, first of all, if you click here, you can actually find that there is a part 1 and part 2, depending on the type of access that was granted to you. What is the most important part? So let's click here. For example, you will see that each unit has modules, and each module has concept videos of its own and the multiple choice questions. So you decide how do you want to take it through. You also have the digital textbook here. You have the formulas, you have the flashcards and the glossary. I'm just going to click on the digital textbook. I want you to see it. You can actually study right from here. You can use the annotation methods and you can open it in a new tab if you still want to just navigate between the actual digital textbook and the actual multiple choice questions on your own, as you can see here. And if you notice that there is an EDR rate here on all 80% of the concept videos and 80% of the multiple choice questions, which explains the Becker criteria. How do I become exam day ready? To achieve exam day ready, you have to complete the following tasks, which is have 80% of the concept videos completion, 80% of correct answers on multiple choice and essays, and 50% of correct answers on all simulated exams, which means that Becker is telling you, as per statistics, 94% of the candidates that used the Becker material to study for the CPA exam for accurate information. We're talking about the CPA exam. However, the exam they already applies on both. But statistically speaking, 94% of the candidates that used the Becker and were labeled as exam day ready by the actual platform itself passed the CPA exam from the first trial and got over 90% as an achievement. Okay, they apply the same process. This is how much Becker is sure and accurate that the platform that they provided with the curriculum and the extensive research and work that were done on this platform will help you pass your CMA exams. So this is how you navigate all through your modules. This is where you'll find the simulated exams, and this is where you click on the study plan, where you'll be able to set your study plan, and the system will be reminding you based on your study plan, and it will be giving you also directions. So if you tell it, for example, that my exam is, I don't know, 22nd of November, let's say, and you're still not up to studies and not up to par, the system will generate reminders for you and tell you that you have an exam scheduled on that date. Please proceed because you're late on your schedule and on your plan. If you go to the practice test, this is where we can create a new test. I'm just going to click on new test because this is what I want you to see. So, first of all, you can tell the system if you're trying to practice, which means that the score and the explanations are shown after each response to a question. This is where, in the initial stages, you're trying to practice. And this is where you are telling the system, no, I want it as an exam. I want to see my final score. So the score and the explanations are shown after the test. This is the most important part that I was telling you about, the test mode. It's always advised to use the personalized adapt to you technology. This is the adapt to you technology that I was telling you about. This is where the system will automatically generate new tests based on your result of the previous test. So it will analyze your strength, analyze your weakness, and based on that, it will actually generate an exam. It doesn't really generate of a pool of 1,000 questions. No, it generates based on your answers of the previous mock exam. And you can definitely scroll down and choose which module do you want to be tested or practiced on, if it's everything or not. And you can choose how many multiple choice questions that you want to start in this practice or in this scoring mode. If you go to the flashcards, you will see that you can choose also which module. Let's say I use the first module and I can tell it to shuffle order and I can tell it to show both sides. Similar to the previous one, if you're practicing and you just want to try on spot, you can see both sides, so the question and the answer on both sides. And if you're trying to actually practice, so you're in later stages and starting to get ready for the exam, you can actually tell the system to not show you both sides. It will flip. So it will tell you click to flip. So you will be able to see the question only. You click on it, it flips and shows you the answer. This is where you can also track your own performance. So you'll see the average daily time spent up to 1 month or the last month, and of course custom dates if you have specific dates. You can actually download this. A lot of corporates ask the students to download the report and send them their way, especially if they're sponsoring them. You have a total study time that is displayed, and you can have a performance report that is downloadable per unit. So videos, multiple choice, essays, etc. And it will tell you if you are, how close you are, sorry, to achieving your exam day ready. This is also for the simulated exams. And you can see exactly the same thing if you click on part 2, but for the modules of part 2. Okay, so basically, I'm sorry I took a little bit extra of your time. I really hope that you enjoyed the first part of the presentation. I'm just gonna go right up to Mr. Daniel. Daniel, as I told you, is not only a colleague, not only a Morgan instructor, but Daniel is also an alumni, and he's gonna give you the best tips and tricks. I really advise you guys to settle up and get ready for the tips and tricks, along with the case scenario that he will be discussing with you. Daniel, up to you.
Thank you, Remie, and thank you also for this complete overview for the CMA certification. First of all, I'm really happy to be part of this CMA bootcamp. And honestly speaking, today I'm gonna speak to everyone as someone who's actually been through the CMA journey, and I know how hard it is and how much dedication someone need to put in order to actually achieve this designation. Just a small reminder. So I hear a lot of times that the CMA actually has two parts. You need a lot of time actually to prepare. You need a lot of time to study. That's correct. But from a personal experience, actually, I completed the two parts from the first attempt with Morgan in less than 9 months. So I think everyone needs to find their own driver. Okay, so first of all, you need to have this commitment in order for you to be ready to actually start studying and start this journey. And trust me, it's worth it. So I think, yeah, Remy, are you sharing the screen?
يلا one moment بس.
Yeah. So basically, I'm gonna start by taking into consideration some key points that usually I stress on in order for us to prepare for the CMA exam. So definitely when you want to prepare for the CMA exam, you need to first of all set a clear target. So decide when you want to sit for every part. This is very important because this will give you the roadmap. This will actually give you more commitment and a study plan timeline that you can follow up later on. So if you don't have a clear target, you will not end up have the required commitment for in order for you to complete the CMA parts. Uh, this is the first key point that, in my opinion, is very important. The other key point is to plan smaller goals. So we talked about the long-term goal, which is to set the clear target on which date we want to submit the first part and the second part. And you need to divide this long-term goal to a short-term goal. So we need to know on a weekly basis how many hours we can dedicate for the CMA. So we know that every one of us has his own life, has his own personal life. So we cannot compare each other and we cannot have a similar, let's say, study plan. So you need to identify what works best for you. Okay. In general, aim to at least have 10 to 12 study hours per week. We do understand that during the weekdays, you don't have enough time, but take advantage of the days off, the weekends, in order for you to advance in the material. The third key point, in my opinion, is to use active learning. What do I mean by use active learning? Don't just read. If you read, you will not actually know if you get the right idea, if you understand the idea, and if you can actually implement it. So definitely you need to read, but at the same time, you need to understand, you need to solve questions, you need to take notes, you need to summarize. And I cannot tell you that there is one best way of doing it. So it depends on how comfortable you are, which method you prefer to use. On a personal level, I used to write everything in my hand, right? This is something I'm comfortable to do. So find your best way and actually adopt it. The fourth key point that I consider very important also in preparing for the CMA is actually to practice. Okay, so you need to practice all the times. Basically, when you are ready, when you complete every chapter, try to mix the questions. The reason why is that if you are working on a specific part, your mindset, your brain will actually focus on this specific part. Whereas when you want to sit for the CMA parts 1 and 2, you will have multiple choice and questions from all over the chapters, correct? So your mindset, your brain need to be able to change quickly from one information to another. And this is how you practice this, okay? So through the multiple choice. As a first step, whenever you start with every chapter, it's very important to actually perform the related questions. But when you advance throughout the CMA part 1 and part 2, try always to choose random questions, okay? And that way you will train your brain to actually move from one idea to another without interruption, okay? The last key point that is also important is how to keep balance. So I always say that if you dedicate 1 hour where actually you are focusing, you are moving forward, you are able to understand, it's better than dedicating 3 or 4 hours by reading or doing something that is not adding value and is not actually getting you closer to your goal. Okay, so can we move, Remy, to the next slide? Basically, we're gonna touch base on how to approach different types of questions. So we already heard from Remy what kind of questions and what are the number of questions that we're gonna receive in part 1 and part 2, the allocation, the percentage, etc. But let's break it down a little bit and let's see from the multiple choice what type of questions I need to anticipate. And same goes for the essays. So when we talk about the multiple choice, basically we have around 4 types. We have what we call the conceptual or the theoretical questions. This is basically straightforward. Somehow it is a definition, it is a principle, it is a terminology, right? So, for example, which of the following best describe opportunity cost? So this is something that you already need to know. You already need to memorize, correct? So this is the first type of questions that you may encounter. The second type is what we call the quantitative questions. So this is straightforward. It requires calculation. So you need to know the ratio, you need to know a formula, you need to know a certain weight in order to receive a quantitative result at the end. Okay? The third one is actually a scenario-based or the application questions, which basically here we are advancing in the difficulty of the question, because in those type of questions, we are not only asking you to calculate a quantitative number or to know the definition, but we are testing your knowledge and we are checking actually if you understand the concept and if you are able to apply it. Okay, so basically here we are presenting a short business situation and we ask you to apply a certain concept that you know. Okay, so for example, decide between 2 projects, which one I need to take. So maybe in this case, you need to calculate some return on investment, some ratios in order for you to be able to get a quantitative number and analyze this number and make this number explain itself. So this is what we call the scenario-based or application questions. And then we have what we call the accept or most likely type of questions. Basically, this is questions that are designed to test the attention of details. So when we are in the exam, basically we are already stressed. And when we read the question, we read the answers. When we read a correct answer and we already know that this is a correct answer, we tend to actually select it without making sure that we read the question correctly. Okay? So when we say that all of the above are correct except, so you read the answers, the options, and you start by reading A, which is for you a correct answer, and just click it. So in those type of questions, we actually want to know if the candidate is aware of all the details. So this is something that we're gonna focus on in the tips on how to approach the multiple choice also. So, quick approach strategy from the multiple choice perspective. What I advise you to do, read the last line of the question first. So know what is being asked. Then eliminate directly what you think it's not the correct answer. Okay, what for you is not even a hesitation, you know for sure that this is not the correct answer. All right. So at the last step, if you are really unsure, make an educated guess because there is no penalty for wrong answer. So don't leave empty questions. Okay. So you are run of time, you don't know what to do, you don't know the answer. Maybe you missed this concept. Try your luck. Okay. Now, when it comes to the essay questions, basically you will face three type of questions. We have the calculation-based essays, where actually you will be required to show some knowledge in the formulas, ratios, calculate a quantitative number, so on and so forth. Then the second one could be a conceptual or written discussion essays. So basically, we need to explain a certain benefit of scorecard, let's say. So here we are trying not only to show that we know a certain concept, but we are able to show the reader that we know this concept and we are able to explain it correctly. The third concept, actually, the third type in the essays could be a mixed or case-based essay. In this type, we actually are combining the numbers and the narrative questions. Okay, and this is basically very common. So basically, you will actually be requested to calculate a certain ratio, formula, etc., and explain what does it mean. We're going to take later on a case study and we're going to approach the questions. But basically, you need to know in the essays, mainly we are testing several concepts, let's say in the CMA, which is basically some of the knowledge where if you know some definitions, some ratios, you are able to memorize it, you are able to use it. Then, on the second hand, we want to know if you are able to make this figure explain itself, right? So, what does it mean to have a certain number? How does this affect a certain analysis, right? Or a choice? So, this is basically the structure that we can have, sorry, in the essays. All right. So, some quick tips when it comes to the essay part. Always pay attention to the question. So, what is the verb in the question? If it is the analysis, we need to analyze. If it is to justify, you need to justify. If it is to recommend, you need to recommend. So, the question is very important because this will be the orientation and this is actually will guide you towards or not you are able to get the grade for that question or not. So pay attention to what is requested. Okay. And a very important concept or note to highlight when it comes to the essays, we are not in school anymore. So don't rewrite the question, don't write a novel. Be clear, use short sentences, think like a manager, not a student. Okay? Always support your answers with a logic, with calculation, not just theory. Theory is very important. You will be tested on theory. But the most important is to explain the theory and being able to explain your thoughts and make the reader understand that you know. And this is the most important part in the CMA. Okay? So, quick notes to keep in mind. The CMA exam, as we said, is not about only memorizing. All right? So, it's about demonstrating your ability to think like a management accountant. Okay? If you practice those question types regularly, you will start seeing a pattern where you will know actually how to solve every question. Okay, so for the essay, structure really matters. So we use short, clear paragraphs. We don't rewrite the question. We use keywords. Okay, so if it is analyze, justify, recommend, as we said, we really need to understand what is requested from you. Okay, so now we're gonna take a practical essay from the Becker platform. The selection of the essay is not for me to test your knowledge, but it is to show you how practically, when you encounter an essay, how the theories or the explanation or the tips that I just gave you, how it can be applied during the CMA exam. Okay, so now we have a scenario, right? So before we start with the scenario, you always see that you have a narrative, you have figures, you have maybe sometimes ratios. So how to answer? When we want to answer an essay like this, we always need to structure our response. So we use bullet points, we keep sentence as we said short and logical, and we show the examiner that we know the definition and we know how to explain it. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about this scenario. Basically here, without getting into details, we have Blue Mountain that actually runs a retail stores in the US. And this Blue Mountain has three divisions. Okay, we have the apparel, we have the shoes, and we have the sports equipment. All right. So the division managers in every division, so we are talking about apparel, shoes, and sports equipments, are controlling the costs and the sales. And we have the corporate headquarters, which actually decides on the investment. The problem here in this scenario is that last year the company posted a loss of $250,000. So we already know that we will be asked to actually explain why this happened, what can be done. So just to put it in a context. Now, what I advise you before reading the scenario is to go directly to the questions. Okay? So Remy, can we jump into the questions? Okay. If we start by reading the question, you will understand what you need to focus during your readings. So the first question is identify and describe the four types of responsibility centers. So when I want to start reading the scenario, I know in which orientation, what should I focus on, because I don't want to read it again just for the sake of, because I did not know what was requested. Okay, so we are talking about the four types of responsibility centers. Just for you to know, the responsibility centers, usually we have four. We have the cost center, we have revenue center, profit center, and investment center. When we go back to the scenario, I'm gonna show you that sometimes you have the answer embedded in the scenario itself. Okay, so if you go back to the scenario one, where actually we have the given, you can see that Blue Mountain operates retail stores throughout the United States. Blue Mountain has three divisions, as we said, apparel, shoes, and sports equipment. The manager of each division is responsible for revenues, which is the first type, and cost, which is the second type. All investment decisions are made by the corporate headquarters. This is the third type. So already in the given, you have 3 out of the 4 answers that you are asked in the first one. So that's why it's important when you read the question before actually reading the scenario itself. Now we know that we are asked to identify and describe the 4 types of responsibility centers. Simply, what you need to do, you need to say that we have 4 types, and for every type, simply and without getting into a lot of details, you explain what is this type. So I'm going to give you an example on how you should answer. We say cost center. This is the first type, correct? So cost center It means we need the managers of that division controls the costs only, right? An example could be HR, IT support, whatsoever. Then we move to the revenue center. Managers in the revenue center controls revenues only. For example, a regional sales office. Profit center controls revenue and costs. This is the difference. For example, in the Blue Mountain division. And the fourth one, which is already in the given, which is the investment center. Here we are controlling the revenue, the costs, and the assets. So what is important in this scenario, not the answer by itself, but the way and the logic you need to use while you are sitting for the exam. So now we already identified those four types. Three of them were already in the given. Okay? So bullet points, very straightforward. Don't write novels, just explain yourself. Okay? So moving to the second question. What type of center do the three retail division of Blue Mountain represent? So we said that we have apparel, shoes, and sports equipment, correct? All of them are a profit center because the managers are accountable for both the revenues and costs. While we said that the investment decisions are retained by corporate. This as well was somehow given in the scenario when we are reading it. So if you really understand what is requested from you, it's not difficult to answer the first two or three sets of questions. Because what will come later is the analysis. So usually you have a definition, you have some identification of how we can use this definition, and then we will come with questions that target the analysis and actually shows if this person only memorized the definition or knows how to apply it. Okay? And this is the very important part. So we already know that we have the first two questions solved. So the third one, how should the Blue Mountain allocate the fixed expenses when evaluating the performance of the three retail division? What we need to know here is that we have the principle of controllability, which means that the managers are charged only for the costs they control. Okay? Because if we allocate the fixed cost to all these three divisions, we will not be able to understand what is creating the problem, where is the issue, why we have the loss of $250,000. So it's very important to allocate the traceable fixed cost to each division and not allocate the common corporate fixed cost. All right? So we already know that in this scenario, we are trying to resolve a problem. We need to understand why we have this loss and which division is responsible for that loss. And in order to do that, we need to separate the costs and have a clearer visibility on the performance of every division. So as you can see in the scenario, we have on the bottom, we have the three divisions, the apparel, the shoes, and the sports equipment. We have the related revenues and the variable expenses. So if you look directly to the figures, you can see that, okay, apparel, the revenue is 3.7 million. Variable expense is 1.5. Okay, so the shoes is 1.5 million, variable expenses is 500,000. When we look at the sports equipment, we already notice that the revenue is 2.2 million, where the variable expenses is 2 million. And when we want to calculate the contribution margin, which is the revenue minus variable expenses, and in short, it is basically the amount that is remaining to cover the fixed cost, you will have 250,000. So somehow we have this perception that the sports equipment might be the problem. Okay, so going back to our question, how should fixed expenses be allocated when evaluating performance? In order to evaluate performance, we follow the principle, as we said, of controllability. So charges that managers only are responsible for should be charged. Okay, so in this case, the traceable fixed costs, as written in the scenario, we have the apparel, which is 1 million, shoes 750,000, sports 1.5 million. This is already given. Okay, so we already know that we had a problem in the sports equipment because we were left only with $250,000, where the fixed cost for the sports equipment was 1.5 million, which means I'm already deficit by 1.2 million. Okay, so somehow we know that this is the problem, right? So we move to the second question, which is to calculate the contribution margin for each division. So we already anticipated that this will come. So when we calculate the contribution margin, as we said, we have the revenue minus the variable cost, or sales minus variable cost. You will notice that the sports equipment have a deficit of have $250,000 as contribution margin, and then we have the fixed cost of 1.5 million. So in those questions, it's really straightforward. As we said, don't write a novel. Don't try to explain a lot. Go directly to the main idea. So put the end result. Okay? This is what the reader wants from you. Okay? He needs to understand that you know what you are speaking of. If you already know the contribution margin, which is sales minus variable cost, but you cannot explain it as we did in the sports equipment, where we are saying, okay, you have a contribution margin of 250,000. We need to think of the fixed cost, which if you consider the fixed cost, you will be in a deficit of 1.2 million. So this is where actually might lead us to the loss of 250,000 that we were worried about. Correct? So always follow this mentality that you need to understand the theoretical approach, you need to calculate, and you need to actually interpret the result that you calculated, and you need to identify a certain solution, right? Or make a decision. This is basically the mentality that I want you to have in the scenarios that you will face in the CMA exams. Okay? It is definitely, you need to know how to apply a formula. You need to know ratios. You need to memorize the theoretical part. That's for sure. But you need to explain it also. You need to understand. Okay. So, which division of Blue Mountain is the most unprofitable one? We already identified it, which is the sports equipment. Correct. And how can Blue Mountain improve this division's profitability? Guys, it's very easy. If we are talking about sales, variable cost, and fixed cost, and we already know that we have a problem in the sports equipment, it's either I will try to increase the sales, increase the revenue, and or decrease the variable cost, and or decrease the fixed cost. This is how I can improve this division. There is no other way. All right. So no calculations is necessary because this is already something that is general, but you need to apply it here because you know that the problem was in the sports equipment. Okay. Now, when we move to the last question, discuss how contribution margin can be used as a performance evaluation tool. And here actually it shows if someone has only memorized the definition and knows how to apply it, or he actually can explain it and put it in a context for this particular scenario. Okay, so we need to understand that the contribution margin explains to us the relationship between revenue and cost. Okay, can my sale at least cover my variable cost? This is the importance of the contribution margin. Okay, and this is how you can explain and identify what needs to be done. So the importance of covering this scenario per se is to highlight to you that the questions that will be on the CMA essays will test your ability to apply concepts and scenario. So the goal isn't to write perfectly, but to communicate your reasoning clearly. Okay? Just like a management accounting would report to executives. That's exactly what the graders want to see. So, clarity, clear logic, correct math, and a fair recommendation. Okay? And this was all for my part regarding the essays. Back to you. I think Remy.
Actually, me. Thank you, Daniel.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. That was very rich. Also, there was a question, just for clarity before we move forward, since you've been covering the questions and essays. One of the questions was, will we have to justify the difference in sales increase to cover the fixed cost with the contribution margin, or it's just about stating what is necessary?
So here the problem that we had in the scenario is to explain from where comes the $250,000 loss. So the orientation of the questions that we had were not targeting a problem in the sales or the revenues, but a problem in the variable cost and the fixed cost. So the problem here depends on the orientation of the questions, is not towards why we have an increase in sales in one division over another, but a problem of resolving the $250,000 loss and to identify the origin of that loss.
Mhm.
Those questions were targeting this part, but it doesn't mean that we cannot have a scenario where we need to explain the difference of the sales or the revenues. But the context that we had in this scenario mainly was targeting the cost matter more than the sales and the revenues.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. And
Most
just
welcome.
for additional clarity, it would be safe for all students to assume that most scenarios will include some questions that require them to have memorized some concepts, like, for example, contribution is sales minus variable cost. Maybe other concepts might be tackled on that. Another question or two may require them to run some math and calculation, not just justify that concept, and another question or two that will actually test their ability to analyze, summarize knowledge, and respond with clarity, which is the basis and foundations of management. So would it be as safe to assume that?
100%. And this is basically the purpose of having the essays and not only multiple choice and the CMA part one and part two. This is where we can test everything in one scenario.
Beautiful,
Perfect.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daniel. So I'll be actually moving forward with what to expect on exam day. And Daniel already covered a small part of this, so I will be skimming quick on a few notes. Still happy to answer any questions that we're receiving in the chat and the Q&A as we go. So what to expect on exam day? In brief, make sure you arrive earlier. So if your exam, say, is at 3 p.m., I would strongly recommend try to be there around 2 p.m., maximum 2:30, even earlier if you can, for safety, just to make sure you're not delayed, because you will need every minute you get on that exam. Don't bring any personals that you don't need for the exam. There may be lockers made available, but you don't really need that. So all you need on the exam is to be there with a valid ID, which is normally the most accepted ID across all countries, is the passport. So if a passport is not available, a valid passport is not available, please make sure to communicate with the test center ahead of your exam date to double check on any other form of ID that may be acceptable. Make sure you're wearing something comfortable, stay hydrated as a principle, and then make sure you will know that you will get scrap paper and pen to use, so you don't need to bring your own. There will be a CMA exam tutorial where you will be familiarized more with the system, but I'm very happy to tell you that the Becker platform is an exact replica of the exam platform. So when you're familiarized with the Becker platform, you will be saving those 15 minutes to take a look at a few questions, maybe in ahead of time, and be able to answer questions a little bit more quickly. And you will always have a private and modular testing booth, so you won't have people around you to ask you questions or that you can ask questions. So it's all dependent on you. You cannot bring in any food or drinks. You are allowed a bathroom breaks, but your exam timer will not stop during that break. And depending on the testing center, they might require fingerprint identification as you enter. Okay? So, how to plan before you get to the testing center? So, planning your study journey, Daniel already mentioned earlier, build a realistic study plan. My colleague Remie also was showing you Note, the Becker platform. You will have a study planner on your platform, and we extremely strongly recommend that as soon as you have your CMA access, use your study plan on the platform. Why? It will ask you to set the date you plan to start studying and the tentative date where you plan to take your exam. And the system, and it will ask you how many hours do you plan to study during the week, how many hours during the weekend. So if you're on a very high busy schedule, you might say, maybe I have 1 hour 5 days a week, 2 hours 3 days a week. I can study 6 10 hours 5 hours on weekend days, etc. And the system will automatically segment the entire content in chunks that you can actually track. So make sure it's a realistic plan that you can actually have the capacity to follow. And then set those realistic study goals. So if the system is telling you study module 1 and module 2 on that day or during that week, study module 1 and module 2 on that day and during that week. If you have the time and the capacity to study slightly more, do so, but don't burn yourself out, because ultimately you will start forgetting notions and going back and forth in the study, which is not really healthy for your planning. So make sure you take a proper pace that you're comfortable with. And as my colleague mentioned earlier, each part requires a certain number of hours, and the system will divide your planning on the timeline or time frame you specified accordingly. So what does it look like? First of all, make sure you plan your study time. Practice, practice, practice. So go over the questions, go over the simulated exam. As Daniel very preciously mentioned, tips: read your questions first, go back to your essay. On the multiple choice questions, be very careful about the questions, because sometimes it helps you eliminate immediately the wrong questions. So keep practicing, and again, as Daniel mentioned, you will identify a pattern of how to respond and how to identify the correct answer. You have thousands of questions in your Becker Access, and we recommend that you repeat those incomplete about 2 or 3 times, which will make you definitely exam day ready. So the final stretch, so keep some time in the end. So I would say, if for the study planner, if you plan to take your exam on April 15th, tell the study planner that you are taking your exam on March 28th, for example, and leave one final stretch for proper review, maybe taking some mock exams, even the simulated exams on the system, and allow yourself a day or two to unwind. If you have to study the night before your exam, you're probably not ready. So make sure you go through that plan properly and give yourself at least one last day to just relax and unwind, because you don't want to burn out before you get to the exam. And once you've established that plan and again, pace yourself, take your own notes, write your own, prepare your flashcards. You have flashcards on the system. You have notes and annotations that you can add to the system. Your instructors will tell you exactly where to annotate what and what to be attentive for. But also keep your own notes at hand. Make your own flashcards. It's much faster and easier to memorize a note that you actually write down, instead of just reading it and going back and forth about it. These are tips and tricks that all our instructors use. So for exam taking, definitely to pass an exam, you need to be knowledgeable. You need to have the confidence and not be hesitant. If you're not confident on exam day, the hesitation will make you slower. Being confident will make sure you will read the question in just the appropriated time and only take the appropriated time to answer it. Note that you barely have a minute and a half, maximum 2 minutes per question, depending on how fast you've answered other questions. So manage your time effectively. And the best way to do this is to actually have a proper strategy in going through the questions. Quickly, because Daniel already mentioned those. So predict the answer first. As you read the question, you will have an idea what the answer should be. So when looking at the answer, you might immediately be able to identify wrong answers by looking at the keywords maybe. Answer every question. As Daniel said, there are no penalty for wrong answers. So any questions that you really can't find the answer to, don't linger. Don't spend 2-3 minutes trying to figure out the answer. Just hit any answer and move on. There's a feature where you can actually skip a question and then go back to review before you submit. You could skip and go back to it later and just select any answers you can from these questions. But make sure don't linger on a question, because it will waste the time you have for questions that you might know more easily. The questions themselves, they have key facts within the question, and the answers include distracting information. And as he also said, make sure you are attentive to the verbs. So if they ask you in the question to maybe calculate something, don't define. Don't think about definitions. If they ask you what's the calculation on this, that, and that, don't actually consider concepts. Just run the math quickly on your scrap paper. Make sure you understand the question. If you're not clear on the meaning of the question itself, skip it, move to a different question, come back to it later. Sometimes a tip that I've heard a few instructors actually mention, sometimes they tell you read the answers first and then read the question. Because when you read the question and you start reading the answers, sometimes you might find it confusing. I mean, that works for others, for some, and it doesn't work for others. So depending on how you find it comfortable, maybe practice that on your Becker Access. If you read the answers first, sometimes while reading the question, the right answer pops in your mind because you've already read them. Other people, if they read those same people, if they read the question first and they start reading the answers, they get confused, because most answers are designed to confuse you. A lot of times you might read all 4 answers and think all 4 are correct. A few tricks in each can easily eliminate 2, and then you might only be confused between 2. One keyword or one verb within either of them might be the make or break between the correct and the wrong answer. So manage your time. You have to go through the MCQs, score a minimum of 50% on your total MCQs for you to be able to move towards the essay question section. And as mentioned earlier, 75% of your score is on the MCQs. So there's a really heavy load on actually getting those MCQs correct. And those essay questions, as we just mentioned with Daniel, they are very easy to go through. Some calculations, some key concepts to list, and then some analytical responsiveness. Those will help you pick up a few more notes and points all over and above what you scored in your MCQs to make sure you actually reach a passing score on the exam itself. So you can see for each section, you have it timed. You have up to 3 hours for your MCQ questions. But if you can finish those slightly earlier with confidence of correctness, so make sure to take all 3 hours if you're not comfortable, if you're not confident with your responses. But if you are, it will give you a little bit of spare time to go through the essay questions and make sure to get more bonus points on your total score to go over it. So that platform on Becker is immediately totally identical to the exam platform. So the more you familiarize yourself with the simulated exams on the Becker platform, the easier for you it will be to navigate that platform on exam day as well. So don't be afraid of the essay. Daniel just demonstrated how easy and simple it might be if you grasp the concepts and read it carefully. Be sure you go through both sections, 4 to 7 questions on each essay. You can scroll through the questions. As Daniel said, read them first, then go through the assumption. It might give you some clues on how and what to answer immediately, which will save you time. Read the entire question for sure. Try not to skip any sections. Maybe just a small part on a sentence or a verb might be the difference between you giving the correct answer or simply blabbering with the wrong response because that was not what was asked. So read your questions carefully. Never leave questions blank. Just hit an answer. If it's wrong, you don't lose anything. It's the same as leaving it blank. But if you're lucky and you hit some percentage correctly on the answers you don't know, that will also give you some additional bonus time points. I'm sorry. So skim the scenario, read the questions first, read the answers first, show your work. So if you want to actually answer, don't write, dissertations. Just be straight to the point and clear. Proofread clearly, quickly, whatever you did. Stay on topic. Make sure you read the question properly and answer accordingly. So this is, for example, another screenshot of the essay. So you have the assumption on one side and then the possibility to write for the answer on the other side. Spend an average of no more than 1.5 minutes per MCQ. Once you go through them all, you will have time to go through the ones you were hesitating. Make use of all the time you have. If you're 100% confident of the answers on your MCQs, even if you still have a little bit of time, submit them, move ahead. But if you're hesitant, take all the time you want, and make sure that you divide the time for your essays. So you have 1 hour for 2 essay questions. Make sure you don't take more than half an hour with the first essay, which gives you another half an hour for the second. Because if you take up 45, 50 minutes on the first essay, that will leave you barely 10 minutes for the last essay. So divide your time, manage your time, and practice. This is the point where we're open the platform for more questions if you have any. Any questions coming into the live chat and the Q&As are being answered as we go. I think we have no additional unanswered questions at this point. We'll just give you another couple of minutes. If you have any questions, let us know. Meantime, Daniel, Remie, anybody has anything to add, tips or any advice for our candidates, please feel free to do so.
I think from my side only a small advice, which is basically when the exam date approaches, especially the last week, you will feel that you forgot a lot of concepts due to the heavy load of materials. Rest assured that you already know the concept, it's already memorized, so don't be scared, don't be stressed. It will come, that's normal. So as Charles was saying, also try to leave a space for your brain on the last day so it can rest, and then you are fully fresh to actually go to the 4 hours exam, and hopefully you'll be able to succeed. And good luck for all of you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Remie, over to you.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Daniel, for the session. We're sorry if we took maybe a bit more than what is expected, but we wanted to cover all the needed details for the CMA exam. So, wrapping up, now you know what do you need to prepare. Now you know that you have a full package. Now you know that you have a material provider right next to you and available. Now you know that personal experiences do matter, and Daniel's touch gave a very important notice to you guys who are sitting for the CMA exam. Now you know also that you have a Morgan bundle discount. You will be able to get discount on the CMA exams. And now you know what are the do's and don'ts in the exam. We have provided you almost everything that you need to know. All of you attendees will get the recording for this webinar. We are also available. Our program advisors in all of our locations are available to assist you. We will reach out to you directly. We hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you very much and have a good night.